So I've been waiting for maybe 3 years for this moment, and that is to have Phil Rouget in a classroom on camera, and he's got wonderful stories if you ask the right questions.
All right, who's first? Right there in the back.
What is the greatest thing you've ever discovered?
Greatest thing I've ever discovered. A couple of years ago, we tagged 10 killer whales in Antarctica because we wanted to figure out where they were going in the winter time. And they're satellite tags, so basically every time the animals came up to the surface of the water, they'd send a signal to a satellite, which would send a signal to our computer and tell us where they were. We couldn't find them in the winter in Antarctica, but we could always see them in the summertime in Antarctica. Well, we studied them for a year, and we found out that they swam all the way up to Brazil, 10,000 kilometers, where they sit in the warm waters and have like a spa bath, and then they swim all the way back to Antarctica. So that was about 2 years of research to get that one small answer, but it's a pretty big answer. Go ahead.
Where was one of your favorite places to dive and why?
Right here. One of my favorite. The question is favorite places to dive. Vancouver Island is some of the best scuba diving in the world. I've dove in Australia, in the Caribbean, in New Zealand, in Micronesia. But Vancouver Island, because it's cold water, and it's oxygen rich, and there's so much diversity of animal life, as long as you're ready to deal with the cold, it's amazing down there. Go ahead.
What do you enjoy most about being a marine biologist?
Oh, that's a good question. There's just so much diversity. You get to travel, you get to be outdoors, you're studying. I'm quite into like wilderness and wildlife and studying animals, so that's pretty much your job. And you teach, you talk a lot. That's one of my favorite things to do. Go ahead in the back.
What do you think about before you go to diving?
What do I think about before I go diving?
Yeah.
Well, we do something called a buddy check, because when you're diving, you always dive with another diver to make sure if something goes wrong underneath the water. So there's a set of 12 steps you go through to make sure that your oxygen or your air is on, and that your spare air is on, and that you have your knife in your proper spot, that you're all hooked up properly, and you guys just check each other before you go in the water. So it's called a buddy check. Go ahead.
If you know about the dangers that are in the ocean, why do you go there?
If I know about the dangers in the ocean, why do I go there? The question is, like, once you become a diver, you're aware that there's a lot less danger than you actually think. Underwater, I guess, I used to be freaked out by water. I didn't want to go in the water at all. It was one of those, you don't see what's underwater and your feet are hanging in the water. Once you put a mask on and you become comfortable breathing underwater, then you see all the animals down there, and you notice that they're not shy away from you, but they're not menacing either. They'll come right up to you, and you basically, it's almost just like, after you do it long enough, it's like just taking a walk out in the park. Go ahead.
What was your goal of scuba diving? Like when you go every time, what's your goal?
What's our goal of scuba diving? For work right now, I work as a marine biologist for a consulting firm, so we do something called environmental assessments. So anytime humans want to build something that's going to be in salt water, whether that's like a port facility or a hydroelectric station or a tidal station or a offshore wind farm, anytime something touches salt water and it has a potential to impact the animal there or habitat there, we get called in because no one knows what kind of animals are there. So we'll dive underwater and video the habitat and the animals, and we'll come back up and write a report on what's there, and then we'll assess the impacts of that project. So that's the goal.
What's the deepest you've ever dived to?
130 feet.
Did you suffer a decompression sickness on the bends?
I've had the bends one time in Brazil. And actually, it wasn't the bends, it was bad air. Sometimes you can get, when you're compressing air for a scuba tank, if it's not clean air, if you're compressing dirty air, you're basically concentrating dirty air in your tank. And if you breathe that underwater, it's like breathing in almost exhaust from a car. And I had some bad air that I got from a dive shop down there, and I spent a couple days in hospital recovering down there. But I've never got the bends. The bends, for those of you that don't know, is basically if you go down very deep and you come up too fast, the bubbles in there's nitrogen bubbles in your bloodstream that start expanding, and that basically, they call it the bends because your arms start to close up and your legs start to close up, and it's, in order to get rid of the bends, you have to go in a decompression chamber on shore and recalibrate, so to speak, otherwise it could be fatal. It's real fun. Go ahead.
Why is bad air so bad?
Bad air is bad because if you inhale too much bad air, you can die, right? You start getting nauseous underwater, and then you lose control of your body, and you can basically pass out underwater. Go ahead.
What's the most dangerous thing that you've encountered underwater?
Most dangerous thing underwater. In Thailand, I was diving with this Swedish couple. This is a recreational dive. And when you're diving, this is the symbol for shark underwater. And so we come, because you can't talk underwater, you just talk in, you know, I'm out of air, or there's a shark, or there's a triggerfish. And so we went down to 80 feet, and all of a sudden we were amongst about 6 to 8 big shark, white pointer shark. And the Swedish guy pulled out his knife to king it. To get the attention of other divers underwater, you hit something hard against your tank, because you can hear that underwater. It goes ding, 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 ding. So everyone turns to where the noise is, and it was the Swedish guy showing us a shark. And as he's putting his knife back into his holster, he sliced his hand open, and a big pool of blood came out. And all the sharks came and circled around all of us, and we had to come back to the surface pretty quick. And there was a bunch of snorkelers at the surface, and they just watched these sharks follow us all the way to the top. They didn't attack, but it was pretty hairy.
When did you realize you wanted to be a marine biologist?
I realized I wanted to become a marine biologist when I ordered, on the back of the Shreddies box, you can order these like 100 animal cards for 99 cents. They're all these exotic animals, and it comes in the mail, and then you have all these fact sheets, 99 fact sheets about animals. There's 2 that I was interested in. One called the Saki, which was this like little blue monkey with a yellow face that was super rare, and it lived in the jungle. And the other one was the blue whale, because the blue whale's like the biggest animal on earth. It's as long as a football field. And it was so big, I just felt like, oh, I have to know more about this animal. So never got to the Saki, but 25 years later, I was satellite tagging blue whales in California for a couple of years. So that was pretty neat. Go ahead.
Have you tagged the blue whale?
So tagging any whale involves taking like, it's an air gun, and you're basically shooting a small little tag that implants like a sliver underneath the whale's skin. And you come up to the whale, there's a little antenna that comes out. You have to be on top of the whale, because the antenna you want pointing straight into the air, because that's sending the signal to the satellite. If you shoot them from the side, then it's sending all the signal into the water. Satellite messages only work in air, right? So you need to hit somewhere on the whale where his body's out of the water enough. So you usually hit the dorsal fin. And when they come up, you know, whales come up, breathe, breathe, and then they arch their back and go down. So you want to get that high arch point. So you come up to them. It's really, you got to be quick. Guy drives a boat in real fast. You shoot the dart in, and hopefully the antenna's sticking up. And those things stay in the whales for anywhere from 6 months to a year. And then just like a sliver, the whale naturally works the dart out, and then it's disposable. Eventually it just falls out and falls to the bottom of the ocean. But we collect all that data during that time period. Go ahead.
When you dart when you dart an animal, when it falls out, does it just stay on the bottom of the ocean floor?
Yeah.
Or does it like biodegrade?
It will eventually biodegrade. Depends where it drops and how deep in water it drops, but it's sacrificial, so there'll be like a remnant of it until it breaks down in the water. Things will break down pretty quick in the water though. In the back over there?
How long have you been a marine biologist?
Well, I like to think I'm still pretty young, but my wife tells me I'm not so young anymore. Let's just look back. I graduated from my undergrad at UVic here in 2001, and I did a master's on the East Coast in finished that in 2004. So probably about in the field working 11 years, 10 years. Yeah. Go ahead.
Have you ever worked on any, like, saving an endangered species, and if so, which endangered species and how you did it?
Well, almost every whale I work with is on endangered species list in some shape or form. Mostly because we were hunting them back in the early 1900s to such an extent that most of the populations have never recovered. So a lot of the work I do is with humpback whales, killer whales, belugas, narwhals, stellar sea lions. All those are on the endangered species list. And the government keeps a pretty close watch on those animals, so when we're working, there's extra environmental steps we got to go through when we're working in areas with those animals. Go ahead.
When you're diving, are you looking specifically for something, or are you just sort of diving around if you see something, you're just going to write?
For work?
Yeah.
For work, we're looking for everything that's in the area that there's going to be an actual footprint of a project. What a footprint is, basically, if you're going to put a dock onto something that there wasn't a dock there before, we want to see what's going to be underneath that, what was underneath that dock and what was next to the dock. Because obviously those animals aren't going to be able to survive as well as they were beforehand. Go ahead in the back there.
What's the
Rarest.
thing you've ever seen?
The rarest thing I've ever seen. Probably narwhal. You guys know what a narwhal is?
Yeah.
It's like the unicorn of the whale family. They have these really crazy, twirly, long, basically it's a tusk coming out. It's their teeth that are adapted. They twist and they turn into these long tusks. And I mean, they only live in the Arctic. Most Inuit people have never seen a narwhal in their life. They're very shy creatures, and they're cryptic. They're hard to follow. So I've only seen them twice, and we spend a lot of time up there.
If you miss tiger whale, do you somehow take out the tiger or leave it until it comes up?
That's a good question. If we mistag the whale, can we recover the tag? The short answer is no. We can't recover it, because you can imagine an animal from here to the wall over there. It's very dangerous for me to try to come up to it and pull something out of its back. So we don't do that. We just sort of say, let's try again. Each tag's worth $20,000, so we try not to mess up. Go
We have
ahead.
time for one last question.
How many years do you have to go to university to become a marine biologist?
How many years do you have to go to university to become a marine biologist? 4 years is the shortest time, or if you just got it's basically a Bachelor's of Science degree, and there's a plethora of places to take that program right in BC, Vancouver Island, and everywhere. If you want to specialize in something, you usually do a post-grad degree, which is either a master's or a doctorate, and then you can be in school for another 2 years to 4 years. So worst case scenario, 8 years. Best case scenario, 4 years. Once you're in school for 4 years, you're just going to be like, this is so, like you're starting to learn after 4 years, you're going to want to stay in for a little bit longer just to get specialized, right?